The prosecution in this case laid out for the jury a web of lies spun by Casey Anthony, which they said pointed to one fact: she killed her 2-year-old daughter. But beyond the circumstantial evidence here, did the state come up short? Following yesterday's not guilty verdict on the murder charges, Prosecutor Jeff Ashton announced he would resign. Well, today, ABC's Barbara Walters sat down with Ashton to find out why he thought the jury didn't believe his argument.
What do you think of Casey Anthony?
I think Casey Anthony is very complicated. I think Casey Anthony is a very, very good liar. I think personally that Casey Anthony killed her daughter.
Casey Anthony chloroformed Kaylee so that she would not suffer, placed duct tape over her nose and mouth to end her life, and then disposed of her body.
What was your strongest piece of evidence? Because there was no DNA, there was no witness, there was no one fact. What was your strongest evidence?
Her actions after Kaylee, quote, disappeared or died. I mean, that was the strongest piece of evidence, we thought, combined with the forensic evidence in the trunk, the odor, the hair, all of those things.
If you could do anything differently, what would you do?
I can't think of anything I would do differently. We presented all the evidence we had in the best way we could, and I think we made all the arguments that anyone could make. So, I mean, it's only been less than 24 hours,
yeah.
So maybe in time I'll think differently, but now I just can't really think of anything I would do differently.
The defense attorney who won the case said that Casey lied because her father abused her and that he also helped in covering the crime.
Were you present in your home when Kaylee Anthony died?
No, and when I heard that today, it hurt really bad. Because if I would have known something would have happened to Kaylee, we wouldn't be here today.
Do you think that he should be prosecuted?
I'm very confident that George Anthony had nothing to do with disposing of the body or any knowledge of what happened to Kaylee. Of that I feel some certainty. So I don't know that if I were recommending, I would recommend anything happen to George Anthony.
The next step is for the judge to decide whether he releases Casey Anthony or whether she has to serve more time. What do you think is going to happen? What's your recommendation?
Well, I don't know that I would make a specific recommendation to the court. I'm not sure that it would necessarily be in her best interest to be out in the community right now because of all of the public sentiment. I would be concerned for her safety.
You are concerned for Casey Anthony's safety? Why?
Well, I wouldn't want anyone in the community to be so upset by this that they might try to do something to her. And you know, that's not what the system is about. She was acquitted, and the people just need to accept that.
So tell me how you feel. Tell me your thoughts. How are you summing this up in your own head?
You know, having done this as long as I have, you have to accept that the system is a great system, even if it doesn't go the way you want it to go.
Barbara Walters with the prosecutor. And joining me now from New York, my colleague, ABC News legal analyst Dan Abrams. Dan, let me ask you first, sentencing tomorrow. Casey Anthony was convicted of 4 misdemeanor counts of lying to authorities, basically. What's she going to get for a sentence?
Well, she could face up to a year on each of those counts, since that means a maximum of up to 4 years. But remember, she's already served almost 3 years. When we talk about a maximum, generally courts don't give the maximum. In fact, in a case like this, a court could say, I'm going to give you a year on each of them, but I'll allow you to serve them concurrently, meaning at the same time. And of course, that would mean she's served more time than that already. So I think that a lot of people expect she's going to walk out the door tomorrow.
And onto the streets of Orlando. That'd be staggering. Now, Dan, you heard our interview earlier with the juror in this case, Jennifer Ford. What did you learn about the Casey Anthony trial? You've covered so much of it from listening to that juror.
I thought it was fascinating to listen to her talk about what the prosecution didn't prove. The fact that they didn't prove how she was killed. They didn't prove why she was killed. And yet, in other cases, jurors have convicted without necessarily knowing those answers. But in this particular case, there were simply too many questions. I was also really interested in the fact that she was really concerned about George Anthony, saying that she thought he was there. That's a big statement coming from the jurors, because I think a lot of us watching from the outside thought that the whole theory of George Anthony being there, the possibility that George Anthony had actually taken the body and placed it where it was later found, was far-fetched. And yet it seemed that at least this juror wanted to know a whole lot more about what George Anthony knew.
Well, we talked about this last night, but let me ask you again. Now, having heard the juror, the prosecutor, the defense lawyer, you think the system worked here or not?
Yeah, I think the system worked. I think that it seems that these jurors were suspicious of Casey Anthony, and yet they didn't feel that was enough. How the rest of us feel about it doesn't matter. The fact that the rest of us could watch it on television, the fact that the rest of us saw much more than the jurors saw, doesn't matter. These jurors came to that conclusion based on the evidence they saw.
And did their duty as they saw it. Dan Abrams, thanks very much for that. We'll be right back.